So the lab that we run kind of had its formation in about 2009, 2010. And the basic idea there was, as you kind of alluded to in the introduction, was really to understand patterns of normal, healthy brain development. So we were recruiting typically developing kiddos. So those are kids born, full term, normal birth weight, no major risk factors for developmental disorders, those sorts of things. So mom was healthy, dad's healthy, that sort of thing. And we've been continuously enrolling kids since then. So we've been lucky enough to get grants to continue, not only continue following those kiddos as they've gone from infants to toddlers to children to now early adolescents and pre-adolescents, but to continue enrolling consecutively. And so what that's allowed us to do then was really end up with a data set where we had close to 10 years of normative healthy data, and then suddenly a dramatic change in the environment. So that's the other thing that we're kind of interested in understanding. So not only mapping out these trajectories of normative development and really understanding relationships between brain structure and function that we get from MRI or EEG, and then their cognitive performance, but then really trying to understand how that child's environment is shaping those relationships. And that environment is broad. So it's things like nutrition, even the home environment, SES or socioeconomic status, those sorts of things. What kind of daycare did they go to? Multi versus single language families, those sorts of things. And as you say, so once we hit into 2020, we never really slowed down, but suddenly the environment shifted. Right? We went from a place where kids were going to school normally, doing their normal thing. Babies were being born. Moms would take them home. They would go off into daycare. The usual suspects, right? We'd have mom groups or dad, family groups and uncles and grandparents coming over and all that sort of stuff. And all of that stopped. And most labs, and this is kind of a distinguishing feature that we had, is that most labs that kind of do this work shut down or at least went virtual. And so that they weren't bringing the families in and the kiddos in. We fortunately never had to go to that extreme, but obviously we had to take all the usual precautions. So, PPE, masks, those sorts of things. But we were still able to bring kiddos in and continue almost doing what we'd always been doing. And as that wore on, there just became this sort of chorus from our RAs and research assistants and our psychologists saying, these kids are acting very differently. Assessments that used to take 15 minutes are now taking 45 minutes. It's really hard to get their attention. There's something kind of weird going on. And so that's kind of what spurred us just wanting to have a look at the data and see, what's been happening over the last, both over the last decade in terms of those sort of normative measures that we would see. And then specifically, once we looked at that and saw some changes, it was then kind of, well, let's actually look at the kiddos who've been born since almost the beginning of the pandemic, going back to last July until almost this July or August. And from that's when we began to see some really sort of disturbing trends.